That's my mother you're pissing on.
While most horror films try to scare you, Braindead tries to drown you in 5-gallon waves of blood blasting across a movie set so violently the floor became a swimming pool of gore. This is the film where Peter Jackson ate a corpse-side sandwich while embalming fluid sprayed everywhere. The movie where a zombie priest fathers a mutant baby, a graveyard shoot turned into a lawsuit, and New Zealand audiences chose this splatterfest over Batman Returns. Today we're diving into 20 of the wildest, blood-soaked, absolutely unhinged facts behind one of the goriest films ever made. Fact 1. The film set a record for fake blood. The Lawnmower Massacre isn't just famous, it's a world record. Peter Jackson didn't want a bloody finale. He wanted an ocean of gore, something so ridiculous it became historic. The scene used an estimated 300 liters of fake blood, and during filming, the crew pumped it out at nearly 5 gallons per second. To compare, that's enough to fill a kiddie pool in less than 1 minute. Actors weren't just splattered, they were wading through waist-deep crimson sludge as it poured from hidden tubes, pumps, and overhead rigs. Every take drenched the cast and crew again, and by the end, the blood had seeped into everything. Props, costumes, lighting equipment, even the walls. Jackson wanted excess, and he got it. The Guinness Book of Records recognized Braindead as the goriest film ever made, and much of that title rests on this scene alone. Fact 2. Peter Jackson's cameo ate an embalmed sandwich. Peter Jackson didn't just direct Braindead, he gleefully dove into the chaos. In one of the movie's most infamous blink and you'll miss it cameos, Jackson appears as the mortuary assistant casually eating a sandwich right beside a corpse. The best part? As he leans in, embalming fluid sprays everywhere, soaking the body, the table, and his lunch. And Jackson? He just keeps chewing, completely unfazed. It's a perfect snapshot of his early filmmaking sensibilities, mixing gag-level gross-out humor with practical effects that push scenes from merely shocking into slapstick absurdity. Jackson later became known for more wholesome cameos in The Lord of the Rings, but this one shows the mischievous, boundary-pushing filmmaker he was during his early career. He didn't need an actor willing to eat next to a corpse. He volunteered. Fact 3. The zombie baby scene existed only because money was left over. Most films run out of money and start cutting scenes. Braindead finished 1 week early with $45,000 left over, and Peter Jackson took that as an invitation to create one of the most unhinged sequences in horror history. The park scene with the zombie baby. None of it was in the original schedule. Jackson simply thought, we've got time, we've got money, let's make something insane. What followed is 2 full days of pure chaos. Lionel taking a mutant zombie infant to the park like it's a normal day, only for the baby to break free, attack bystanders, and get into a full-on wrestling match with its own father. Jackson has repeatedly said this is his favorite scene in the entire movie, and it's obvious why. It's disgusting, hilarious, and totally unpredictable. Fact 4. Jackson baked monsters in his mom's kitchen. Before Braindead, before Meet the Feebles, before the Oscars, Peter Jackson was a backyard filmmaker with nothing but imagination and stubborn determination. While making his first feature, Bad Taste, Jackson needed alien masks, but he didn't have money for a workshop, molds, or industrial ovens. So he used the next best thing, his mother's kitchen. He sculpted alien heads at home and baked them in her oven, setting the latex in the same place most families bake lasagna. That DIY spirit carried straight into Braindead. Jackson approached filmmaking like a mad scientist, solving problems with creativity instead of money. His early effects didn't come from studios or big budgets. They came from a household oven in New Zealand. Looking at the scale of his later films, from The Lord of the Rings to King Kong, it's surreal to realize it all started with latex creatures cooking beside the family dinner roast. Braindead represents the evolution of that spirit. Bigger budget, more crew, but the same determination to make something unforgettable using every trick available. Fact 5. The movie used cheap film to make room for more gore. Braindead wasn't shot on 35mm film like most big productions. Instead, Jackson intentionally chose the cheaper Super 16mm format. The reason wasn't artistic, it was practical. Every dollar saved on film stock was another dollar he could pour into puppets, prosthetics, exploding limbs, and fire hose-level blood effects. Jackson knew the movie lived or died by its gore, not by its clarity. And ironically, that sacrifice helped define the movie's style. The grainy look of Super 16mm added a rough, grindhouse texture that made the violence feel even more outrageous. The cinematography becomes part of the chaos. Slightly dirty, slightly gritty, and completely at home in a world filled with undead creatures and fountains of syrup-thick blood. Jackson bet everything on practical effects, and choosing cheaper film stock made that possible. It's a classic example of early career ingenuity. Fact 6. 2 zombies have a mutant baby. In a movie filled with grotesque imagery, nothing hits quite like the sudden romance between the zombified priest and the zombified nurse. After Lionel locks the infected victims in the basement, the priest and Nurse McTavish develop a disturbingly fast attraction, and things escalate almost immediately. Their undead courtship results in one of the most notorious sequences in the entire film. Nurse McTavish becomes pregnant and gives birth to a mutant zombie baby only moments after the act itself. There's no build-up, no warning, just pure Peter Jackson insanity. The birth scene is as graphic as you'd expect. Fluid spraying everywhere, a creature with an oversized head and razor-sharp teeth crawling out before it even has a chance to scream. That baby becomes a recurring menace, biting, scratching, and shrieking its way through the film. It's equal parts horrifying and darkly funny, and it shows how Jackson didn't just push boundaries, he vaporized them. Fact 7. The filmmakers were sued over a gravestone. While the production had permission to film in the cemetery, they didn't get individual approval from families whose loved ones' headstones appeared in the background. When the Bradley family saw their relative's gravestone in a zombie fight scene involving the Kung Fu priest, they took the production company to court, launching a case that became a landmark moment in New Zealand privacy law. It wasn't just a small complaint, it forced the industry to confront questions no one had really asked before. What counts as a violation of privacy when filming in public? What rights does a family have over a headstone's image? The case helped shape the country's legal framework for privacy torts. For a low-budget splatter film made by a young director, it was an unexpectedly serious aftermath. What was supposed to be a simple location shoot ended up influencing actual legal precedent. Fact 8. In New Zealand, it outperformed Batman Returns. You wouldn't expect a $3 million splatter comedy to outperform a Hollywood blockbuster, but that's exactly what happened. When Braindead opened in New Zealand, it earned more per screen than Tim Burton's Batman Returns. That means that, theater for theater, Peter Jackson's gore-soaked zombie comedy drew bigger crowds than Michael Keaton, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Danny DeVito combined. The numbers don't lie. New Zealand audiences were proud of their homegrown filmmaker and thrilled by the audacity of his vision. While Batman Returns had massive marketing behind it, Braindead had something stronger: local hype, word of mouth, and an audience hungry for something bold, bloody, and unapologetically weird. That early momentum helped solidify Jackson's status as New Zealand's breakout director long before Middle-earth arrived. Fact 9. The film was almost rated suitable for teenagers. Despite being one of the goriest movies ever filmed, Braindead came shockingly close to receiving a 15 certificate in the UK. The British Board of Film Classification watched the exploding heads, dismembered limbs, zombie babies, the Kung Fu priest, and the lawnmower massacre, and still considered rating it for teenagers. Their reasoning? The violence was too silly and cartoonish to feel genuinely harmful. In the end, they settled on an 18 rating, but the discussion itself is legendary. It proves just how strange Jackson's tone really is. The gore is so over the top, so exaggerated, so drenched in slapstick energy that even censors couldn't take it seriously. Fact 10. The opening location was used in Lord of the Rings. The movie's opening scene on Skull Island was filmed at the Putangjirua Pinnacles, an eerie geological formation in New Zealand's Wairarapa region. The towering stone pillars create a supernatural landscape that looks like it was carved for monsters, which made it perfect for the capture of the Sumatran rat monkey, the creature that sets the entire story into motion. But more than a decade later, Peter Jackson returned to that same spot for one of the most iconic scenes in The Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King. The Putang-Jirua pinnacles became the haunted paths of the dead, where Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli confront the ghost army. It's surreal to think that the same location used for a low-budget zombie comedy would later become one of the most important visual moments in a multi-Oscar-winning epic. Fact 11. The fake blood was made from food ingredients, and the set began to rot. The film's gallons of gore weren't industrial products. They were made from kitchen ingredients. Golden syrup, food coloring, and boiled apple slices created blood that was thick, sticky, and safe for actors to drown in. But because so much of it was used, and because the lawnmower finale took weeks to film, the sugary mixture sat under hot studio lights for days at a time. It eventually started to ferment. Cast and crew described the smell as a sickening mix of melted candy and rotten fruit, and it clung to everything: the floor, the walls, even the props. Costumes became so saturated that many couldn't be salvaged. While audiences saw non-stop gore on screen, the people filming it were trapped inside what felt like a decomposing candy factory. Fact 12. Peter Jackson later married his co-writer. Before they became the Oscar-winning power couple behind The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh were writing partners on Braindead. Along with Steven Sinclair, they shaped the script's bizarre blend of slapstick, gore, comedy, and heart. The collaboration wasn't just professional, it was the early foundation of a lifelong creative partnership. Walsh's humor and storytelling instincts helped refine Braindead's madness into something coherent, giving the film emotional beats that deepen the absurdity rather than drowning under it. Walsh and Jackson continued working side by side after Braindead, co-writing films like Heavenly Creatures, The Frighteners, King Kong, and ultimately The Lord of the Rings trilogy, where Walsh won 3 Academy Awards. It's surreal to trace that journey back to scenes of undead romance, killer babies, and fountains of fake blood. Braindead wasn't just a milestone in horror filmmaking, it was the beginning of one of cinema's most influential creative duos. Fact 13. The US version cut out 12 minutes of gore. When Braindead reached the United States, distributors decided American audiences weren't ready for the full experience. They trimmed 12 minutes from the film to secure a theatrical rating, removing many of its most outrageous gore sequences and comedic beats. The result was an 85-minute dead-alive cut that felt noticeably tamer and choppier than Jackson's original 97-minute version. Key character moments vanished, pacing suffered, and some of the film's clever setups no longer fully paid off. For years, fans had to import foreign VHS and DVD releases to see the unedited cut, the version Jackson himself considers definitive. The censorship wasn't unique to Braindead. The early 90s saw several horror films watered down for American release, but in this case, the cuts nearly erased the film's identity. Without the full splatter on display, Braindead becomes a strange, incomplete shadow of itself. Fact 14. The rat monkey prop was built from real animal parts. The infamous Sumatran rat monkey, responsible for the entire outbreak, wasn't just a rubber creature. The effects team built parts of it from molds and textures based on real animal specimens. They studied monkeys, rats, and exotic marsupials housed in New Zealand facilities to create something that felt biologically possible yet disturbingly unnatural. Some of the skin textures and facial details were modeled directly from preserved specimens, giving the puppet an unsettling realism. Jackson wanted the creature to feel like something that could exist in the wild, and its grotesque design makes the film's opening attack hit even harder. It's small, fast, and vicious. And because the puppet was partly built on real anatomical reference, its movements and appearance land in that perfect uncanny valley between movie monster and actual nightmare animal. It set the tone for the film immediately. Weird, intense, and absolutely disgusting. Fact 15. The Kung Fu Priest delivers one of horror's most iconic moments. Before he becomes a zombie, Father Magruder delivers what might be the greatest martial arts moment in horror history. A full-on fight scene where he flips, kicks, and punches through a group of undead attackers while shouting his now famous line. The combination of a clergyman performing acrobatic kung fu and zombies exploding around him is pure Peter Jackson. Completely absurd, yet played with total sincerity. Actor Stuart Devaney performs the scene with absolute conviction, never breaking the serious tone despite the comedic insanity. The moment became instantly iconic. Fans quote it, remix it, and celebrate it as one of the film's high points. It set the tone for the rest of Braindead, unpredictable, high energy, and gloriously unhinged. In a movie filled with ridiculous characters, the Kung Fu priest stands above the rest, not because he's the most logical, but because he commits hardest to the chaos. It's a scene that defines the film's identity and remains one of the most memorable images in horror comedy history. Fact 16. Fran Walsh appears as the mother with the baby carriage. In the infamous zombie baby park scene, Peter Jackson's personal favorite, there's a quick background moment where a nervous woman pushes a stroller while watching Lionel struggle with the undead infant. That woman is Fran Walsh, Jackson's co-writer and future creative partner. It wasn't a planned cameo meant to draw attention, it was simply the result of a tight-knit production where everyone, from writers to assistants, stepped in whenever a body was needed on camera. Walsh happened to be nearby, so she grabbed the stroller, stepped into frame, and delivered the perfect horrified reaction. Her cameo is an inside joke for fans who know the Jackson-Walsh partnership, and it adds a personal layer to an already chaotic scene. Braindead was a hands-on production where the crew wasn't separate from the madness, they were part of it. Walsh's appearance is one of the many tiny details that remind you this movie was made by a group of people who weren't just working. They were having fun creating something outrageous together. Fact 17. The funeral song is recycled from Meet the Feebles. During the funeral sequence, mourners quietly wait in the church as somber organ music plays. But what sounds like a serious, respectful hymn is actually a twisted inside joke. The melody comes from Sodomy, one of the most outrageous songs from Jackson's previous film, Meet the Feebles, a raunchy puppet musical infamous for its explicit humor. Jackson stripped out the lyrics, slowed the pace, and turned the tune into a church piece, knowing full well that most people watching would never recognize its origins. It's the perfect example of Jackson's mischievous streak. Why commission new music when you can turn a puppet sex song into a funeral hymn? Most viewers took the scene at face value, never suspecting the joke buried under the organ chords. But for fans who caught the reference, it's one of the funniest Easter eggs in Jackson's early filmography. Fact 18. The film led to the creation of Weta Workshop. Braindead didn't just push boundaries, it helped launch Weta Workshop, the world-renowned effects company that would later win multiple Oscars for The Lord of the Rings. Richard Taylor and Tanya Roger worked on Braindead's gore effects, creatures, and prosthetics, showcasing a level of creativity and problem-solving that caught Jackson's attention. Their collaboration solidified during this film, and the trio later formalized their partnership into what would become one of the most influential special effects studios in the world. Braindead's grotesque effects served as a training ground for techniques Weta would refine into world-class artistry. Jackson pushed the team to innovate, experiment, and build things that had never been attempted in New Zealand cinema. Weta's future, its breakthroughs, its awards, its legacy began with the bizarre creativity of this splatter-filled horror comedy. Fact 19. Peter Jackson built some of the miniatures himself. Even with a full effects team on board, Peter Jackson couldn't resist getting hands-on with the craft. He personally built several of the film's miniature models, continuing the DIY approach that defined his earliest work. Jackson had always been the type of filmmaker who'd pick up a paintbrush or glue gun long before delegating the task to someone else. For him, building props wasn't a chore. It was part of the joy of filmmaking. His personal handiwork gave Braindead a physical, handmade quality that's hard to replicate with larger crews or digital effects. You can feel the tactile realism in the miniatures, the textures, the subtle imperfections that make the world feel lived in. Jackson's direct involvement connected Braindead to his origins in bad taste, where he famously played multiple characters, operated cameras, built props, and even crafted alien masks in his mother's oven. That spirit never left. Fact 20. Braindead helped inspire Shaun of the Dead. When Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright set out to make Shaun of the Dead, they didn't hide their influences. They pointed directly to Peter Jackson's Braindead. Pegg wrote in his autobiography that the film was a major inspiration for their approach to blending horror and comedy, proving that zombie films could be outrageous, emotional, and hilarious all at once. Braindead's balance of slapstick chaos, heartfelt moments, and over-the-top splatter became a blueprint for modern horror comedy. You can feel Braindead's DNA in Shaun of the Dead, the desperate attempts at normalcy, the sudden bursts of ultra-violence, the emotional core hidden beneath absurdity, and the willingness to make the audience laugh 1 second and recoil the next. Braindead didn't just influence a movie, it helped define an entire subgenre. Braindead isn't just one of the goriest movies ever made. It's a milestone of pure, unorthodox creativity that launched careers, pushed boundaries, and influenced a generation of filmmakers. If you enjoyed diving into these insane behind-the-scenes facts, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into cult horror classics, and let me know in the comments which movie you want covered next. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more iconic rewinds.